the process is mediating the message, I would say. If it's just two people, a deaf person and a hearing person interacting, as much as possible, I try to hang back, wait, especially if possible, to work consecutively so the person has finished what they need to say, and then I actually go for meaning. So constantly I'm thinking, what is the question and what is the answer and how is it related? So in my head, I'm as much as possible dropping form and going for the meaning, going for the point. What's the goal? What's the goal of the deaf person? What's the goal of the hearing person? Keeping that in mind and really, trying to have the message make sense to everybody. And I would say that the process, if I were to kind of boil it down to one thing, it would just be what's the meaning, what is equivalent message in the other language.
But the longer I've been involved in interpreting, the more I've come to realize that it's really understanding what the message is and all the parameters that are involved in understanding the message, and then conveying it in the other language and not allowing yourself to get hung up with the words. So I think that's what's going on for me, is what's really being said here, what's the intent of the speaker, and then making sure that that same intent is conveyed in the other language.
What a good interpreter does, or what a good interpretation involves, is not just listening or watching what somebody is signing or listening to what somebody is saying and put words to it. It's important to actually, before you even start the interpretation, to know the setting that you're going into, why the people are meeting, or why they're having that exchange, because that gives me some kind of guideline, some kind of idea of what I can expect. Then as people are speaking, I need to analyze the whole message to figure out what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to say, what their point is, and then how I can get that across in the other language.
For me, always getting as much information as you can before the assignment. Trying to get an agenda or name signs, or especially when you're put in meetings that they have their own little jargon and you need to be a part of it. And then when I go in, of course, introducing myself to whomever I'm going to be interpreting for, getting a chance to chat with a deaf person beforehand so that I get a sense of where their language is at, to try and match theirs. And also getting some kind of idea from them too, what's going to be happening here and what is it all about. That's the process I go into. And then when I'm on, if I'm in a setting where it's just 3 people, I try to work consecutively. Difficult to do when you're in a habit of working in a simultaneous environment all the time. But I try to do it. I try and make a mental note that I do that. And then just to work, to listen, to try and get the meaning. Always constantly say to yourself, what are they trying to say? What is the meaning behind that utterance? And then putting it out as as clear and as accurate as possible. And so doing that both ways, not only, and if I'm not understanding something that the deaf person or the hearing person has said, to take that responsibility and interrupt them and say, the interpreter wasn't clear on this, would you mind saying that again, or that, or if you missed something, because you're the hearing for the deaf person, so you want to get as much information to them as you can.
Inserting a third person into a conversation, because that is part of what this is. It's inserting a third person into a two-way conversation can be a real challenge. The interpreter has got their own set of values and beliefs and all kinds of different things, and that individual is trying to suspend what they believe and what they value and all of the stuff that goes into communication that's nonverbal, and they're trying to pick up on what I'm communicating from all of the nonverbal things, and what the deaf person that I would be communicating with is trying to communicate back to me. I would think that would be a real challenge, to suspend what you think and just say what you see. That would be a real challenge. For me, I believe so much communication happens non-verbally anyway, that I would be a little bit concerned that the individual is paying so much attention to my words that they got the words right but they didn't get the meaning. And you know, so much communication happens by using words that don't mean the same thing as you think that they mean, whether it's jargon or that type of thing. I would be really afraid that the nuances of communication wouldn't be picked up. And you know, whether it's from me communicating, but I would also be very concerned that the nuances from the other person weren't being communicated back to me.
When I think of the process of interpreting and what goes on inside of our brains, I really like Jan Humphrey's metaphor of taking in a message that is essentially a naked idea that was clothed in a particular language, and you have to undress it, and you have to get back down to that naked idea, and then you go to your target language closet and you proceed to dress it up again in different clothes, in the clothes of the target language, so that when you present it to the target language consumer, it'll be packaged in such a way that they will experience and understand that message hopefully as close as possible to the same way that the source language users would have experienced the original message. So I really like that way of thinking of what goes on in our heads. I think it works.
To me, interpreting means you take in a language either with your ears or with your eyes, and you just listen or just watch, and you take out the point of that message. And you know, it's not the words. The words are just fluff. It's like you get the point out and then you give the hearing person or the deaf person the point, you know. Yeah, like the real point of the message.